Hello all. This will be my first ever review episode. I really wasn't gonna do critiques for the stories I was gonna do. I was gonna have this channel be more focused on narration. But a lot of people asked for, hey, what did you think about my writing? How did you feel when you were reading it? And I was like, oh, well, okay, I can do just a standalone video that kind of covers how I feel about it. Because I write a little bit myself, and I have here and there. And it's easy to be like, okay, well, I've got so many views on my story. You know, like I've got 100 views on my story, 200 views on my story, but, you know, I might have some upvotes, but I don't have any comments. Nobody's telling me what they felt about my writing. And that's kind of a Debbie Downer. I've experienced that myself. So it's like, why not? I can do one video and critique like once a week of the stories I read before. I'm sure it won't really distract from the purpose of the channel. And so, yeah, I kind of wanted to do this for everybody who had asked for it, and I'll get started with the first story. I Am Not Alone, I Never Was by SlayerMMA. To start off the bat, there were some mistakes I made in this video myself, or this narration myself. I had just gotten started. This was the first story I did narrating for that wasn't my own story. And so you can really tell I don't know how to equalize my voice. I don't know how to limit it, don't know how to normalize it in this first video, right? And so it is very apparent. And you can hear my wife typing on her computer in the background. And that it was pretty bad. So I'm going to re-record that episode in the future once I get through a lot of the other stories that I've already have lined up. But yeah, I just thought I would lead with that because that I was like, oh man. I went back and listened to it not too long ago. I was like, wow, this does not sound that great. So I will be re-recording that, SlayerMMA. But besides that, it was an absolutely wonderful story. There were a little bit of grammatical errors here and there, some sentences that were a tiny bit awkward, but those were just a blemish on a very astute portrait, a very emotional story. I felt so strongly for the main character. There was no exposition either as to why the main character was in the house or had come to the house. Instead, it was something that the reader learned through a series of events. There's no exposition. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to this house to clean it because I had a family member, blah, blah, you know. Instead, it was a growth with a character. It was an exceptional world building. And, yeah, just a deeply emotional story. I felt for the main character, and toward the end of it, I was like, wow, this is a good twist on like a stereotypical ghost haunting story that turns out to be an emotional awakening for the main character. And then I just got sucker punched by the twist at the end. And I remember looking at my wife and I was just like, oh my gosh. I'm not going to say the twist. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who may want to go back and listen to it. But what a devastating twist. The ending, the horror was just so well captured. I imagined our main character, his car had run out of gas. He was running down that tunnel of trees, and I was imagining like Savannah, how they have some of the manors where the trees cover the roads. And he's running, the gravel's crunching underneath his feet, and he hears the thumping of the thing coming up behind him, hunting him down, seeking him out, trying to get him. And I was at the edge of my seat. I really was. So really, really, really good story. And I will come back and re-record it in the future, I do believe. All right, moving on. The second story I read was I'm Alone in an Abandoned Building by IArgonauty, or Maria Applevisser, which I hope I'm saying that right. I read the first part, and this will most likely be the longest story on this channel. It is 17 parts. It is quite the undertaking. And its length makes it very similar to a novella, but so does the writing. The prose and the writing are so refined that it's just a beautifully written piece. And I felt like I was in a dream, like lucid dreaming. It captured that feeling incredibly well, where everything was so ethereal, I guess you could say it. Maybe that's the best way to put it. And the main character talks about how the walls are blackened stone and how the carpet digs into their feet and hurts in places, and how they must watch this painting, this beautiful painting. And I was like, wow, this is just so, like, I really can't even put it into words, but it was very capturing, I guess you could say. I imagine the painting as like this like beautifully done like oil painting with like this vivid imagery of the ocean coming upon this woman. I mean, it was just so good. And I really can't wait to see what comes next. I'm very excited. But so far, the first part really hooked me. You know, the setting of like stairs that lead to nowhere, doors that will not open, all the furniture's old and decrepit, it's got cobwebs and it's antique, and there's shoes to be found and windows that lead to the outside, but the outside seems bleaker than the inside of the building. It's all very gripping, and I cannot wait to read more. So, yeah, I can't wait. Moving on, we have Help. I'm stuck in an elevator, and the man behind me just turned around, by Eat the Monolith. So this is the first part of a two-part, kind of like a little sci-fi reality bender. And there's not much I can say besides the fact that the character feels alive. The main character that we follow just feels so vivid. He feels like a real person. You know, I am not going to get into the elevator. I'm going to walk the stairs instead, like a smart character. And the concept is just so, I guess it's just so cool, of like, you've got this mysterious figure standing inside of the elevator, and the imagery of like brushed still elevator, and you can't make out the shadow of his face, but you can see him behind you if you're facing away from him, and you may try to make conversation with him, but he'll never answer. It's just so creepy, very unsettling. It makes you want an answer, and we're not left with one. And so I'm hoping that the next part does have like a little bit of an answer built into it. And I read ahead, I won't lie. And so I kind of know that there is a tiny bit of an answer. But what a great story. It really is like capturing of, like a kind of the indomitable human spirit. I know that's probably like really cringe to say, but at the end when he's talking about like, oh, well, I've always, he's like psyching himself up, but you can tell that the fear is there inside of his heart still, where he's like, I'm gonna, turn around, I'm gonna fight, I've always promised myself I'm gonna fight. That's very human. So it's a very lived-in character, and I really enjoyed the story, and I can't wait to get to the next one. Moving on, we have I Do Not Believe the Religion That Practice by Fluid Eye 8990. Whoa. This is the first story I ever had to put a graphic warning on. And graphic it was. But it wasn't like that senseless violence, that like that graphic, like needless violence, just violence for like Saw. Saw. It wasn't like Saw. Instead it was, I don't know if the author is listening to this, I don't know if you were trying to get across kind of like, not the insanity of religion, but how it can really like capture people in a moment when they're vulnerable and weak. But I felt that through this short story, I felt like how easy it would be to like indoctrinate people into this belief, and how easy it would be able to capture them if that was the only thing that they could turn to. And I mean, it was just so exceptionally well done. The father, the priest, how manipulative and vindictive and cruel, but at the same time, he's trying to make himself seem like this benign character who's trying to lead all these people to grace, but the truth is that he is like deeply cruel and evil, and he takes pleasure from the pain he brings upon others. And Miss McGovern, the fact that she was so enraptured by him brings to mind like the idea of like a false prophet, or like huge like money making like pastors and stuff, like TV evangelists and stuff. And I mean, there was nothing I could do but feel for the main character, who is like bearing witness to this all but can't escape because it is his own parent doing these things, and one day he will have to fill that role. It was a very impactful short story. My wife listened to it. She listens to all these, of course, she's like, oh yeah, I'll listen to them. But she was listening to this one, and right before she was to take a nap, and I walked in there and I was like, oh, did you enjoy it? And she was like, I cannot sleep with this on. This is like so intense. Like, it makes your heart race. You're like, what's going to happen next? Oh my gosh. The tension just kept building through the story. It was absolutely amazing. So, a big props to Fluid I8990. I will say there were some grammatical errors, or a little bit of typos here and there. But just like with I'm Not Alone, I Never Was, they were just like small, tiny blemishes on top of this like Van Gogh. Very, very, very intriguing and capturing and good story. So the last story to cover is The House I Squatted In Never Existed by SXE Savior. The first part of a 4-part series. Exceptional story. Really, really exceptional story. There's mentions of, suicide and abuse. And those are so well written. Feel very lived in. And the characters, both of the characters feel very vivid. You have like this almost punk kid who's like trying to break from kind of his family, but he doesn't really have a choice in the matter either. So he's not one by choice. Instead, it's like this environment has pressed it onto him. And then you have, of course, the rebel kid who the life is not forced on them, but they long for this. And they just work together so well. The teen romance is just so... It's so... melodramatic. That's not the good word for it. I don't know. It's really a heart squeezer. I like it. I dig it. I love like the cheesy romance, and like how when we were younger, how far we would go for others and stuff like that. And how you may mean well, but in the end, even if you mean well, sometimes things don't go according to plan, right? And the writing was just really good. the story was very capturing, and I wanted to read the next part the next day. But I had to tell myself, no, we're on a schedule. So I really cannot wait to read it and see where the story goes. But right now I am rooting for the two of them very hard. So you have done an exceptional job in writing a story where the characters are just so lovable. I mean, it's just like, I don't want anything bad to happen to them, but I know that something is almost definitely going to happen that is bad. So, goodness. It's nerve-wracking, really, but it's just an exceptional story altogether, really. But yeah. That's what I think. Once again, I would just love to thank you guys so much for giving me your stories to read, for having, the bravery and the skill to put your stories out there into the world. You put pen on paper, or maybe fingers to keys, and you've created these worlds that are so enticing and are just so lovable, and at times just downright horrifying, right? Which is the goal. And you all have done a exceptional job. I have been having little nightmares here and there. So you guys have done great. And I can't read more. I can't wait to read more of especially these part series, or if any of you who I've read like just a singular work of yours, if you have more, I cannot wait to read it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And thank you guys so much for having the faith in me to narrate it, even though I'm a new narrator. And I hope I can get better in the future so I can bring more life to your works. But thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.